1 week before Brian Rolapp announced the biggest structural change in PGA Tour history, Rory McIlroy stepped up to a microphone and called it a glorified Korn Ferry event. 7 words. That is all it took to turn a business disagreement into a public standoff between the face of the PGA Tour and the man hired to run it. And that was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the chief executive officer fired back on a national stage. The PGA Tour bent one of its own rules for one player and one player only, and fans across the golf world erupted over what they saw as blatant special treatment. This is the complete, verified story of how Rory McIlroy and Brian Rolapp went from allies to adversaries, and what it means for the future of professional golf. And if you want the real story behind the headlines instead of the corporate spin, subscribe right now, because every detail in this video comes straight from the record. To understand how this standoff started, you have to understand the man on the other side of it. Brian Rolapp spent more than 20 years at the National Football League, where he built the media machine that turned Sunday football into a national obsession. He negotiated the broadcast deals. He shaped the product. And in the middle of 2025, the PGA Tour hired him as its first chief executive officer for one reason: to do for golf exactly what he did for football. Here is the part most people forget. Rory McIlroy liked him. In August 2025, after their first meeting, Rory McIlroy told reporters, "I was able to spend a good 90 minutes with him just talking through everything to do with the tour." And then he went further, "I like him. I like him a lot. I like that he doesn't come from golf. I like that he doesn't have any preconceived ideas of what golf should look like or what the tour should look like. I think he's going to bring a fresh perspective to everything, and I think he wants to move pretty quick, so I'm excited." Those are not the words of an enemy, those are the words of a believer. Brian Rolapp moved quickly, just as Rory McIlroy predicted. His signature project became a complete restructuring of the PGA Tour calendar, set to debut in 2028. The plan splits the schedule into 2 tiers. The top tier, the Championship Series, would feature the elite events, with purses expected around the $20 million mark that signature events have carried since 2023. The second tier, the Challenger Series, would house everything else, with purses likely under $10 million. Connecting the 2 tiers is a promotion and relegation system. A minimum of 20 players from the Challenger Series would be promoted to the top tier at the end of each season, and players could earn immediate promotion by winning multiple Challenger Series events or capturing a major championship. Now here is the twist that makes this entire feud so remarkable. This concept did not come from Brian Rolapp. According to reporting from Eamon Lynch of Golf Week, the blueprint traces back to August 2022, when Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy themselves called a player meeting in Delaware. The ideas discussed in that room included a 2-tiered system named Champions and Challengers, with 12 to 15 upper-tier tournaments and a streamlined eligibility system with promotion and relegation. In other words, the plan Rory McIlroy would eventually attack in public was, in its earliest form, partly his own creation. As Eamon Lynch put it, the Future Competition Committee is basically Delaware for slow learners. For a while, things looked cooperative. In March 2026, at the Players' Championship, Rory McIlroy revealed that Brian Rolapp had personally walked him through the plans in an hour-long phone call before presenting them to the media. "He just sort of took me through everything that he was going to say to you guys," Rory McIlroy said, describing the direction as positive. He even showed sympathy for the difficulty of the job. "I think he's got into this job and realized how difficult it is to turn this big ship around, and there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen and a lot of opinions." Then came June 16, 2026 at Shinnecock Hills, and everything changed. Sitting in his pre-tournament press conference ahead of the United States Open, Rory McIlroy was asked about the proposed Track 1 and Track 2 structure. He did not give a diplomatic answer. He detonated one. "I just think there's going to be certain events that might lose their stature if a sponsor doesn't pony up $30 million, so that's the tough thing," he said. Then he named a specific victim, an event like last week, the Canadian Open, potentially going to one of these Track 2s. And then came the line that shook PGA Tour headquarters: Track 2 is a glorified Korn Ferry event. That's what Track 2 is going to be. So, I don't think the Canadian Open should be one of those. Understand the weight of that comparison. The Korn Ferry Tour is the PGA Tour's developmental circuit where purses sit around $1 million and young players grind to earn their cards. Rory McIlroy, a six-time major winner who has won the RBC Canadian Open twice, was saying the chief executive officer's grand vision would reduce historic national championships to minor league status. And he was not finished. He went after the entire economic logic behind the modern PGA Tour. Liv created this false economy where we had to up prize funds and had to cut fields and try to support the top players and all that stuff, which I think needed to happen because that was the only way to retain talent at the time. But now that Liv looks like it's less of a threat, I think, as I said, the old ways of the PGA Tour weren't actually that bad. He doubled down moments later. It's funny. Like, I think as they've done all this work, you start to realize that the way the tour was before Liv came along was actually pretty good. It was a pretty good structure, and everything sort of worked pretty well. The context matters here. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund announced in April 2026 that it would stop financing Liv Golf at the end of the season, removing the very threat that justified the arms race in the first place. Rory McIlroy was not a lone voice. At the Memorial Tournament, 18-time major champion Jack Nicklaus made his own discomfort public. I don't want to comment on the tour's schedule because I'm not exactly in favor of what they're doing right now. He added, "I hate to see tournaments bunched too much together with too many big tournaments too close together." That's a problem, I think, and I think that's going to be a problem for the tour in the future. When the greatest champion in the history of the sport and its biggest current star both question your plan in the same month, you have a credibility crisis. The timing made it worse. Rory McIlroy dropped those comments exactly 1 week before Brian Rolapp was scheduled to officially unveil the new model. The biggest star on the PGA Tour had publicly undercut the chief executive officer's signature project on the eve of its launch. Brian Rolapp could not let it slide. On June 23, 2026, at TPC River Highlands ahead of the Travelers Championship, he announced the 2028 competitive structure and then addressed Rory McIlroy directly. Yeah, I had a chance to speak with Rory today. We talked a bit about it, and I think he's made some comments publicly since then, Brian Rolapp told reporters, confirming that a private conversation had taken place that very day. Then he dismantled the criticism point by point. I think the best way to think about what we're doing here is that right now we have 47 events at the PGA Tour. We'll have 47 events going forward. That current model serves roughly 230 players. We'll serve that amount of players the same. He framed the overhaul as clarity, not demolition. We are just organized now in a more simple understanding competitively so our fans can understand it. Our partners know what they're getting as far as value. So we think we've just organized the same tour into a much more interesting and competitive system. And finally, the direct rebuttal to the Korn Ferry comparison, if you look at the Challenger Series events, they'll be at venues you recognize. They'll be for healthy purses, which we announced today. They'll include a subset of the same 200 and change players that we have today. That is much different than what the Korn Ferry Tour is today. Not everyone bought it. Analyst Matt Mosley fired back publicly, "How is this much different than the Korn Ferry Tour?" Rory was pretty much on point with what he said. What this effectively does is prevent those non-SIG events from landing any of the top players in their tournaments. And that is the heart of the argument. If the best players in the world are concentrated in the Championship Series, the Challenger Series becomes a second-class product no matter how you brand it, exactly what Rory McIlroy predicted. Notice what did not happen at that press conference. Neither man apologized. Neither man retracted anything. A policy disagreement had hardened into a public standoff between the two most powerful figures in American professional golf, with Tiger Woods, chairman of the Future Competition Committee, absent from its discussion since his rollover car accident in March, posting only, "This is an exciting moment for the game of golf." Then came the escalation nobody saw coming, and it did not come from a microphone. It came from a schedule. The PGA Tour requires every member to play a minimum of 15 events per season. It is one of the clearest rules in the book. In 2026, Rory McIlroy is on pace to play 14. Not because of injury alone, but by design, his schedule, in his own words from Shinnecock Hills, is getting less and less as the years go on. And while every other top player teed it up at the Travelers Championship, the final signature event of the 2026 season, Rory McIlroy was already at Royal Birkdale preparing for the Open Championship 3 weeks early. So what did the PGA Tour do to its rule-breaking superstar? Nothing. According to multiple reports, Brian Rolapp can invoke a discretionary clause allowing members to bypass the minimum for extenuating circumstances, and the PGA Tour is set to apply exactly that protection to Rory McIlroy, allowing him to keep his full status into 2027 without any sanction. The reaction was instant and brutal. One popular golf account posted that the PGA Tour just bent their own rules for its biggest star. Fans and commentators called it clearly special treatment, warning that such exceptions create perceptions of hypocrisy and inequality. And here's what made the criticism so devastating: Brian Rolapp handed his critics the ammunition himself. At that very same June 23 press conference, he had declared, "Golf has an amazing tradition of meritocracy, probably the best sport in the world that I can see about you earn what you earn and you do it inside the ropes and you're rewarded for it, and our athletes are conditioned that way. I think we got away from that." He preached meritocracy on a Tuesday. And within days, his organization waived the rulebook for one man. So here is the first question for you. Does the face of the PGA Tour deserve flexibility after years of loyalty, or should the rules apply equally to all 230 players? Drop your answer in the comments. Where does this leave the two men? Strained but not severed, and that nuance matters. This is not a cartoon feud. Rory McIlroy praised the March presentation, then torched Track 2 in June. Reports indicate he later softened his stance after further discussions with Brian Rolapp. His position is genuine ambivalence from a player who helped design this system in 2022 and now fears what it has become. But his formal power is gone. He resigned from the policy board. And at Shinnecock Hills, he admitted it plainly: "I'm not in those rooms. I don't know. I play my schedule, and I'll continue to play my schedule. The star with the loudest voice in golf has the least say in its future. The unresolved questions are enormous. If Rory McIlroy gets an exemption, what stops Scottie Scheffler or any other star from demanding the same? Which historic tournaments, the Canadian Open, Colonial, the Phoenix Open, survive the $20 million plus economics of Track 1, and which get relegated to a tier their own biggest champion called a glorified Korn Ferry event? And can Brian Rolapp, who officially takes full command in January 2027, hold a new structure together when its success depends on stars who refuse to be told where to play? So the second question belongs to you. Is Brian Rolapp's plan genuine progress or a downgrade dressed up in National Football League packaging? And is Rory McIlroy defending the soul of golf or simply resisting change he no longer controls? Tell me in the comments, because I read every single one. And subscribe with notifications on. Because the next chapter of this story is already coming, the 2028 eligibility overhaul that could slash the PGA Tour's 48 priority categories down to as few as 12, and that fight will make this one look like a warm-up.